I'm gonna need you to sit Tyler Lockett. Why David Montgomery decided to spaz is I think that was his best game this season against me when I need him not to score at all.
I knew he
Yeah,
was gonna have a good game because it was the Packers. Never got the greatest run defense.
I can't I can't Tyler Lockett, I can't have him score more than 10.5.
He probably won't.
I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love.
And now for our feature presentation.
Balls deep with Devin and Jovan.
Welcome to another episode of Balls Deep with Devin and Jovan. It's episode 30 now. We hit that 30 episode mark.
Big
How you
3-0.
feel about it? How you feel about it?
Good, good. It's exciting, you know. Glad to be back. We missed last week because of, the holiday.
Yeah,
Uh,
so to start the episode, we want to say that we hope you guys had a wonderful Thanksgiving, a wonderful, holiday. Uh, we both, were talking about it prior to recording, and it looks like, everyone had a very full Thanksgiving, you should say. So thank you guys for tuning in per usual. We hope you guys had a good holiday. But to start off, we got a few, big things that happened since last recording. To start off, we'll go to the MLB. Theo Epstein, he stepped down as the Cubs president of baseball operations after 9 seasons with the Chicago Cubs. I know he was very adamant in saying that, an executive really only has a 10-year window in, making an impact, you can say. He spent, I believe, 10 years with the Red Sox before he moved on. He stepped down and moved to the Cubs. But he decided, to cut it short at 9 years. He says this offseason, what had to come with that franchise, he felt like the moves that they need to make needs to be by someone that's going to be there long term and not someone that's going to be there for a year. So he stepped down, and Epstein so far is one of 5 executives to lead multiple organizations to titles. He led the Red Sox to World Series in 2004 and 2007, and the Cubs in 2016, which helped break two of the largest droughts in MLB history: the Red Sox 84-year drought and the Chicago Cubs 108-year drought.
and some more news, some more good news. Kind of playing off of what we talked about a little bit in our last episode, but women continue to break history in sports, which is also pretty big. Vanderbilt's Sarah Fuller became the first woman to play in a Power 5 football game on Saturday when she delivered the opening kickoff of the second half. She actually has been a part of two Division I sports, considering she also plays soccer. So that was huge. Congrats to her for breaking a barrier. She opened the kickoff with a squib kick in the second half, so that was great. And also, Browns Callie Brownson became the first woman to work as a position coach in NFL history. On Sunday, she filled in as the tight end coach after the wife of Brown's tight end coach gave birth to their first child. Brownson
Congratulations
is
to
in
them.
her second year as an NFL assistant. Congratulations to her as well. Obviously, it's only for the time being, but hopefully, it opens the door for other opportunities for her, obviously, to move up in the ranks as, a higher assistant or even eventually a head coach in the NFL, which would
Yeah,
be, great to see.
it's something small for now, but it's going to lead to something bigger down the road. I
It's
mean,
a it's a foot in the door to.
this is her second franchise that she's been with. I believe she was with the Bills prior. So she's making moves. Hopefully, this opens doors not only for herself but for other females out there. But congratulations to everyone involved in that. But going on to other news, Buffalo's Jarrett Patterson, he thrashed Kent State this past weekend. with 409 yards and 8 touchdowns in their 70-41 win. So just to put it in comparison, in Buffalo's first 3 games, he rushed for 511 yards and 8 touchdowns, and he nearly matched that in that one game against Kent State. So that's huge news. I'm pretty sure that his name is now on scouts' radar when it's time for him to, move on up to the NFL. But hopefully he can continue his success and make big moves moving forward. But that's history in the making right there.
And finally, for our last quick bit of news, both the Lions and Jaguars made some front office moves when firing their GMs this past week following their Week 12 losses, as well as the Lions relieving head coach Matt Patricia of his duties. We know he kind of struggled finding his own identity over in Detroit. Really couldn't find any success. Especially a lot of blown leads on Detroit's part. So they're obviously looking forward to finding something fresh, finding something new. And we'll see what happens from there.
I think it was time, just because like when he was hired, it was a good hire. I'm not saying it wasn't, but I don't think they should have moved on from Jim Caldwell unless a big fish was on the market. Let's say like a Bill Belichick per se, because they essentially got worse since moving on from Jim Caldwell. Caldwell had them competing in the playoffs, and then ever since then they just been down the road. But even former Lions players like Darius Slay were celebrating when the news dropped that Patricia lost his job. But I'm not worried about Patricia. I think he'll find a job very soon. He'll probably be back out on the Patriots staff next season, and maybe he'll get another head coaching opportunity. But hopefully he learns it from his mistakes.
His first stint as a head coach happens often where guys don't really see the success at first. But then down the road, he'll probably get another opportunity. I don't see why he couldn't learn from that first opportunity and, probably be a better head coach second time around. But I don't see why he wouldn't be able to land another coordinator job very soon.
Well, now since we're talking about NFL, we're going to talk specifically about the NFL at the moment, starting with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill, he spazzed on Sunday against the Bucks with his 13 receptions, 269 yards, and 3 touchdown performance. That's what he had for the whole game, but he erupted in the first quarter alone with 203 yards, 2 touchdowns. Some of the media members, including Stephen A. Smith, are already quick to crown him as the best receiver in football. Yes, he's leading the league in touchdowns and receptions. No, touchdowns and receiving yards, I should say. So my question to you is, do you agree or disagree with him being the best receiver in football?
I don't really completely agree with it yet. More specifically because there are guys who are consistently at the top of, the yardage, touchdown, reception category every single year. Guys like DeAndre Hopkins and Julio Jones and now Michael Thomas. And so, he's getting there. And if he's able to do it on a consistent basis, week in, week out, year in and year out, he's definitely on his way there. But it's just difficult to really say that off of one game, although it was a pretty huge game. All he really did was expose what we already knew to be probably the worst part, or one of the worst parts of that Bucs team, was that secondary. We all know how suspect they've been. And really, he's just a stretch the field guy. He's a fast guy. He's capable of burning anybody. So if he's facing off against a secondary like that, he's going to have that kind of game. But I wouldn't go ahead and just say that he's immediately the best wide receiver in the league. I mean, Julio Jones had a 300-yard game a few years ago, and people are almost reluctant to say that he's the best wide receiver in the league at any point. So if we see it on a consistent enough basis, week in, week out, year in, year out, definitely. But right now, I wouldn't just say that. Probably currently the best right now for this season But do I think he's the best receiver? No.
Yeah, you just beat me to it. So I'm here to disagree in terms of being the best receiver in football overall. This season, there's an argument to be made being that he's, leading the league in touchdowns and receiving yards. But again, he's averaging 15 yards per catch, and he's also the guy that's second in the league in receiving yards is his teammate Travis Kelce, and his quarterback's also leading the league in touchdowns and receiving yards, and his top three in quarterback rating, and in another category I can't remember, but he's playing with two of the best players in football at the moment, especially at their given positions. Yeah. So it makes his job easier. And like you were saying, he exposed what we already knew in the Bucs, and he's a stretch the field guy, like you said. And they were playing man to man with no safety help, so it made his job easier. I'm not taking anything away from him because it was a very impressive performance. But there's argument to be made that he's the best receiver in football this season, just like Michael Thomas was last season. Like, I don't think Michael Thomas is the best receiver in football, whereas you do. But he has the numbers to prove it for that given season. But in terms of overall, it's hard for me to even put him in the top five, Tyreek Hill specifically, just because you have Devontae Adams, Julio Jones, Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins. I'm missing people off the top of my head that he's not better than. Like Keenan Allen. Give me Keenan Allen before you give me Tyreek Hill. Keenan Allen is very underrated, especially now that he's playing with a rookie and he's putting up the numbers that he is. So it's hard for me to even put Tyreek Hill in the top five conversation overall. So to put him at one is a stretch, in my opinion. Honestly, that would be disrespecting a lot of the top receivers in the league at the moment. But in this season, there's argument to be made. So I wouldn't be quick to naming him number one.
Yeah, I agree. But with that being said, we're going to move on to a little bit more football. There's reports of increasing Jalen Hurts' role in playing time. He's receiving a lot of first-team reps prior to the Monday Night Football matchup against the Seahawks. There was a lot of Seattle players saying that they wanted Jalen Hurts to start against them. Whether it's because they think that gives them a better chance to win or not, who knows? But it's caught a lot of momentum. So the question is, do you think Wentz is done in Philly, or do you see his future lying there?
I think he's done. I think he'll get another opportunity in the NFL. Maybe it's Chicago, because Chicago doesn't have the draft capital to trade up to get a top rookie or upcoming prospect. I know draft capital it's a coincidence that Nick Foles is there and he's always going to be tied to Nick Foles with their time in Philly. But I think probably a team like Chicago, who's in desperate need of a quarterback, who doesn't really have the opportunity to go out and trade for another player or even draft someone. I don't even think they're going to even be able to trade for him. But I think once it's done, Philly's going to try to trade him next season. And I think what they're doing now is seeing what they have in Jalen Hurts before they go ahead and draft another quarterback. Doug Peterson, I don't think his time in Philly is done, but he's on the hot seat at the moment, especially with the way Wentz is playing. It's hard to it's hard to say that Wentz is terrible because of all the injuries that Philly has faced, and not having the necessary weapons to succeed. But he's playing terrible to the point where you can't really even argue against it at the moment. This season, I don't even know how many turnovers he has. He's passing the Eagles out of games and opportunities to win. So I think he's done in Philly, but I don't think he's done in the NFL. I think he's still a starter in the league somewhere. We shall see.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that Wentz is done in Philly, but not in the NFL. Same as you just said, but also I think it has more to do than just with the fact that he's been kind of, in and out with injury, inconsistent. I just think the team is bad. They really don't have, even if he was healthy and playing consistently, they don't really have anybody to put around him, especially with all the injuries. I think at this point, like you said, they're having a down year in a down division. They want to see what they have in Jalen Hurts. Really, the worst that could happen is already currently happening. They're not playing well. So you could really only go up from here. They want to see what they got in Jalen Hurts to see whether or not they move forward with him or not. I think at this point it's best for them to do that, get maybe a few picks out of Carson Wentz because he's not a scrub. He's not a bad quarterback. But get something out of Carson Wentz and practically just blow the team up. I mean, sending him away, getting, draft capital, and then just going from there and rebuilding at this point, that's kind of their best option. So
yeah,
I really,
this past 2 seasons, he's essentially been playing with practice squad players.
yeah, I agree.
It hurts his, his stock, but he's not helping. Like this season, he currently has 14 interceptions. But the Eagles front office isn't doing isn't helping him one bit because they're not supplying him with the necessary weapons. Like, yes, this offseason they went out and traded for Marquise Goodwin, who, opted out due to COVID reasons. There's injuries going across the boards in terms of the receivers. But Justin Jefferson fell in your lap on draft day, first round, and you went ahead. It was pretty much a, no-brainer the way he performed in college. But you went ahead and drafted Jalen Reagor instead of Justin Jefferson. And look where both stand now. Jalen Reagor was on, the injury list for some time this season before he returned, and Justin Jefferson is leading all receivers in pretty much every category.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I said, I think it has a lot to do with Philly and Wentz as a whole. Both, I believe, take a big part in the blame for what's going on. At this point, it's more so just get as much as you can for him so that you can rebuild the team as a whole. Because if they don't, it's really just going to be the same thing year in and year out with the same quarterback.
Well, moving on to additional NFL news, we're talking about the Patriots. They just, beat the Cardinals 20-17, bringing their record now to 5-6 on the season. My question to you is, are they a playoff team this season?
I do think the Pats are a playoff team this season. They're not in. I mean, they do have a good division. I mean, the Bills are there who are playing well. The Dolphins are there who are playing well. But you do have to remember there's extra 2 teams making it to the playoffs. Extra 1 team making it to the playoffs from each conference. And like I said, I mean, the Pats, they've just really, in my opinion, struggled to find a rhythm. I don't think they're a bad team. It's more so necessarily they started off really well. Then after Kim got injured, it almost seemed like they just lost their identity. But they're starting to pick it back up again. I don't think they're a bad team when they're playing well. We saw them just beat the Cardinals, who is a very good football team. We saw them have a good close game against the Seattle Seahawks. But then also it's just they beat the Ravens. But then losing to teams like the Texans is kind of alarming. So it's really just all about finding consistency for them. But I don't think the playoffs is out of range, more so considering their division is still kind of up in the air right now. As good as the Bills are, as good as the Dolphins look, it's still a tight race. I think if they can find that identity, like they did yesterday against the Cardinals, and start to play more consistent football, they'll definitely be in the playoffs. Now, do I think they'll make a deep run in the playoffs? That's a different story. But I think they are good enough to make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, so it was hard for me to decide this, but I'm in agreement with you. I honestly think they'll finish the season at either 9-7 or 10-6. Just if you look at the remaining schedule, they play the Chargers, who are a good team, but they can't seem to close out games. They're playing the Rams, who one of the best overall teams in the league at the moment. But they're coming off a loss to the 49ers, who have Nick Mullins playing quarterback. And then they have 3 divisional games against the Dolphins, Bills, and Jets. I think out of those 5 games, if they can clean sweep the 3 games against their division, it's going to help them, because at that point they'll have 8 wins and just win one or both games between the Chargers and the Rams, and you're a playoff team. And I think the extra team in the AFC making the playoffs is going to play in their favor. I don't think they'll win their division. I think they're a wild card team at best. And if they do make the playoffs, I don't see them winning a game. I think they'll lose in the first round, just based off of the way they've been playing offensively and defensively. But this is very alarming. Just between, I don't want to go off topic, just because we talked about this before about who's going to have the better season, the Bucs or the Patriots, because we had that Belichick Brady comparison. Brady has all those weapons in Tampa, and he's not playing that great. And then now Belichick has literally little to no talent on either side of the football, and he's at 5-6, which is not that far off, and they still can make the playoffs. So I don't want to go into that conversation, but it's just very alarming to see where both teams stand at the moment.
No, I agree. I mean, even when the Bucs were looking hot, it felt as though Brady was getting given a lot of credit. But more so, I felt the credit should have been given to that defensive front seven, who was playing phenomenal. But like you said, we won't get into that right now.
That's for another episode.
But it's definitely leaving an interesting end of the season for us. There's some close divisional races that really are still anybody's to win at this point. So we'll just have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see. We'll definitely bring that topic up again at the end of the season. So we'll leave that topic for a future episode moving forward. But at the moment, we're going to take a break, a small break, and we'll be back with some NBA and boxing news. So stand pat, and we'll be right back.
It's your boy. Eat that pussy 445. I want all you motherfuckers to go fuck with my motherfucking main niggas, Devin and Jovan over there at the Balls Deep podcast, my nigga. You feel me? If you guys don't know them, you guys will know them. And if you guys are hating motherfuckers, you guys can go suck a mean ass fucking dick. You know what I mean? Balls Deep with Devin and Jovan. They know their fucking shit. They're funny as fuck. They are, without a shadow of a doubt, the best sports podcast on the fucking planet, my nigga. You feel me? So go check them out all over social media. They're all over Apple Music. Wherever you guys get your guys' motherfucking podcasts from, Balls Deep with Devin and Jovan. Go fuck with them, nigga. If you guys don't fuck with them, drink my fucking piss, bitch.
And we're back with NBA news. We're going to jump right into it. Klay Thompson suffering a season-ending Achilles tear, which is really unfortunate. Obviously, he missed all of last season with, I believe, an Achilles.
No, ACL.
ACL.
On his opposite leg.
Yeah, on his opposite leg. He missed with an ACL on his opposite leg. Now having to miss again because of an Achilles. It sucks. Everybody was excited to see the Warriors back. Everybody was excited to see, Klay Thompson back. But now he's out again for an entire season. So what do you think this means for the Warriors moving forward? And are they still a playoff team? We think this is the end of the dynasty.
So what does it mean for the Warriors moving forward? At the time of his injury, I wasn't really sure, especially because the news dropped on draft day. So people were unsure if they, will change their draft plans in terms of drafting someone different to fill in his role. But the thing is, no one really knew that he had tore his Achilles. They just knew he was injured, and it was a lower leg injury at the time. They went with James Wiseman, who I thought should have been their pick even before the news dropped of Klay Thompson. But since, the Klay Thompson news dropped, they went out and got a Kelly Oubre. So now they're starting 5. It's pretty solid. It's Steph, Oubre, Wiggins, Draymond, and now Wiseman. So on paper, it's solid. I think in terms of playoff teams, they're somewhere between 6 and 8 at the moment. So I do think they're a playoff team. I don't think they're going to be as competitive as they would have been with Klay. I do think this hinders Klay on the defensive end moving forward, just because I don't think he'll be as explosive. But offensively, his bread and butter is catch and shoot, and I think he's not going to lose. He's not going to lose, or he's not going to lose that. You can't. It's hard to lose that. So I think he only really needs one leg to be Klay Thompson, and on the offensive front. So I think offensively he'll be fine. Defensively, we shall see where he stands after this injury. But is the dynasty over? I don't think the dynasty's over until they break it up. So I'm going to say no. I think they still can compete for a championship when he's back and healthy again.
It's unfortunate for the Warriors, but like you said, I mean, they've made a good amount of moves. I think they probably made more moves than any team other than the Lakers. I think they're still a solid team. I honestly think that they're a lot better than a 6 or an 8. I think they could even do as good as a 4. Maybe not because it's the West, because in the West is a little bit more difficult. But I think they're more than capable. But obviously, like you said, future reference, it's kind of tough. I think more so than anything, it's got to be mentally exhausting for Klay, having just came back from an entire year off from an ACL, and then having to miss another whole year with the Achilles. That's really just gotta nearly break somebody, in my opinion, especially somebody who their entire life is practically a sport, or is playing that sport, and then having to miss 2 straight seasons because of season-ending injuries, and not really knowing if you could get back there. However, I think he benefits more so than any player that's kind of had this injury, because, like you said, he's really 3-and-D. He's not going to have as much as that explosiveness on the defensive side. However, he's very smart when it comes to playing defensive basketball. So I think it'll be more than enough to make up for it. He probably won't be as good on the defensive end of the ball, but I still do think he'll be a defensive player. Obviously, we know that shooting, like you said, is his bread and butter. I don't think he'll struggle at all with that. I mean, I'm pretty sure he had that one game where he had like 40 points off of like 6 dribbles. So his offensive game is not gonna be hurt at all. And I might have to agree that I won't necessarily say that the dynasty is over, considering it's like you said, until it's broken up, you really can't say it's over. I think with what they have right now, and as good a player is as Steph is, the leader that he can be, I think they're more than capable of making a run for a championship now, just because they have that veteran presence. They've done it before. They have talented players. So even though we're saying they're a middle road to end of the road playoff team, they're more than capable of still winning a championship without him. However, I think when he does come back, that'll launch them into the same atmosphere as the Lakers, the Clippers, the Nuggets. So it's almost like we saw when we watched that Bulls doc. I mean, you don't really finish it until don't really end that dynasty until you've lost. You know what I mean? Just keep giving them opportunities to win, and I think they will win again at some point. So I don't think the dynasty's over.
But my thing is, I had them finishing as the second best team in the West behind the Lakers, with Klay.
Yep.
Now, without Klay, at best, I see them as the 5th seed. I don't really see them as a top 4 seed in the West. Without them, even as they're currently constructed, with the roster. That doesn't mean I don't see them winning a playoff series. I still think they're going to be tough to knock out in a 7-game series, especially if Steph goes back to that MVP season where he doesn't miss.
Yeah.
And Steph is what people forget. Steph is fully healthy too. He's coming off an injury. So just surround him with the pieces that he needs to succeed. And I think at the moment they have a solid core to surround him with. I think Kelly Oubre was an underrated move. He's very similar. He has a really good offensive game who can create his own shot, but defensively he's underrated. And I think he's going to pick up for what they're lacking with Klay being out. I think Wiggins is on the move. I think he's not going to be there for much longer. I think they're going to get something for him as well, and it could be in a trade for Lou Williams. So that the Clippers are shopping Lou Williams, and they could use someone off the bench, fulfill that scoring aspect. But they're still making up for losing Iguodala off the bench and Sean Livingston off the bench. So I think in terms of depth, they just need to make moves for depth in order to still prepare for, a championship run this season. Yeah. Even for future references, I think Oubre stays long-term, and they'll be really well with him filling in that third spot because they did win a championship with Harrison Barnes, and I think Oubre is better than Harrison Barnes. So, and with Klay Thompson, I think he won't be as fast on the defensive end like we both said, but I think he'll still be a solid defensive player. He just won't be a great defensive player like we're accustomed to him being. So who doesn't say they can't win a championship with, Steph, Klay, Oubre, Draymond, and Wiseman. Wiseman, this season really is going to be, seeing Wiseman turn into the player that they want him or need him to be. So as long as Steph, Klay, and Steve Kerr are there, and you can even include Draymond just because he is that heart of the team. As long as they're there, they're gonna compete for a championship. Not saying that they'll win one, but they'll definitely be competitors. It's just the reason why I say they won't. I'm not sure they'll win one is because the West is just too deep.
Yeah, no, I agree. And as weird as it sounds, I think having lost their two best players last season, it might have been one of the better things to happen to them because they did get younger, which means that they'd be more capable of, keeping a dynasty alive a lot longer. But obviously, it's just unfortunate having lost Klay for a second season. So now it kind of hinders their abilities and kind of lessens their chance and lessens the window of opportunity they have to win more championships with their full squad back healthy.
Well, with that, we're gonna move on to some boxing news, but this boxing news is slightly different. It involves former basketball player Nate Robinson. He actually had a boxing match this prior weekend or past weekend, I should say, against former YouTuber. I don't even know if he's still a YouTuber, Jake Paul. And prior to that fight, he said he was going to shock the world. And Stephen Curry replied to him after the fight and said, he for sure shocked the world. He got knocked the fuck out in the second round of that boxing match. It came as a surprise to most, if not everybody. It just looked like he didn't really prepare for a boxing match. And when I say that, it didn't look like he did much sparring. Just because when he was getting hit, it seemed like, or when he was getting hit and cornered getting his back put up against the ropes, he seemed to start instead of defending, he was basically more offense is my best defense, and he started swinging for the fences, and that's what caused him to get knocked down a few times before he got put to sleep. So him getting knocked out kind of reminded me of when Pacquiao got slumped against Marquez, just because of all the memes that came out of it, of him being knocked out. It looked like he died. It really looked like he died in that ring. I'm glad he's okay because he made a joke about it afterwards, tweeting saying, "What happened? I missed it." He said something along those lines. So let's just get your opinion because I know you were watching it with Mike.
That was pretty bad. I don't know. I was near certain. I was almost as certain as I've ever been picking any fight prior to that fight. I assumed, him being an athlete or a former athlete would automatically give him the better chance at winning the fight. However, training doesn't help if you're not training boxing, and it looked like he did no boxing training at all. It looked like he honestly, if I had to say, it looked like he did just go in there and relied on his athletic ability and just assumed what I did and was like, I'm gonna win just because I'm more athletic. Because he really didn't look like he knew how to box in general. He didn't know how to punch or throw a good punch at least. He was leaning in with his head a lot when he was swinging, leaving his chin open, leaving his chin up. It was bad. He wasn't
really playing
defending.
defense?
He looked like he was literally doing the Soldier Boy into fucking Jake Paul's. Like, he was just you and into him, and eventually it backfired. He got knocked out. I don't know. It was terrible. I saw something with the NBA logo, and it was him laid out over it, and it said NBA stands for Never Box Again, and he probably won't.
But the thing is, what made it worse about it is he said he was going to do this for all the basketball players, and then he got knocked out, and everyone immediately said, "This does not represent the NBA at all." So, but it does look like you said he did train because he was in great shape, but he wasn't training for a boxing match. Like I said, it didn't look like he did much sparring. But then there was I'm just mad because Jake Paul is making a lot about this, making it seem like he's a lot better than he is. He's calling out people like Conor McGregor, and Conor McGregor responded, I believe, saying, "Let's fucking go." And I think McGregor is gonna kill the guy. But I honestly think he needs to lose, and I personally think he needs to lose just because I think he thinks he's hot shit, especially now after knocking out Nate Robinson. And I don't like the guy, and I just hope that he gets humbled very quickly. Just because I think this was his second professional match, you can say, boxing match. And Nate Robinson, I thought was going to be a good opponent due to him being a former athlete, but I was wrong, I guess. But
I'll give credit to him either way.
But
he was taking this fight seriously.
Oh, for sure.
Clearly, he's been training for a few years now. He said he's been training for 2 years, so I do give him credit. I don't want to take that away from him.
No, and that's what I was going to get to. Is there was a clip of him released of him sparring, and he was knocking dudes out in these sparring sessions, and it was different opponents at that. So he's taking this crap seriously, and kudos to him. But I just don't think he's as good as he thinks he is. And I just hope he gets humbled so that, he can realize, hey, he can realize where he actually is in terms of his growth, and he can, use that to his advantage. I just don't like him because he seems like he's very cocky and not humbled. I just feel like he needs to be humbled before, he turns out to be a true boxer, because he's fighting these other YouTubers, former athletes of different sports. He's not really fighting a true boxer. So, and it's really more of a money thing and, the fame, which is why he's calling out Conor McGregor instead of an actual boxer.
Well, that really brings me to my next point is if he's going to take this as serious as he says he wants to, then he should definitely start fighting other amateur or pro boxers rather than other, NBA players and NFL players or famous people. If you want to take it as serious as you're trying to say, rather than just getting a payday, fight other real boxers. Because even if he were to fight McGregor or Dylan Dennis, like you called out Dylan Dennis as well, who are both mixed martial artists, they'll both kill him.
Because they specialize in striking.
Even in boxing. So I think, in my opinion, if he does want to take this as serious, he's got a long ways to go. He should fight other boxers rather than just names, but we'll see. We'll see how serious he takes it.
Well, yeah, I agree. And then leading to the main event of the whole reason why that pay-per-view existed was Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones. It was weird watching them fight just because it's been so long, and it was just weird watching that fight because a lot of people joked about it, saying, "Who let these two uncles fight on Thanksgiving?" or they look like two uncles about to fight on Thanksgiving. But it surprised me because Mike Tyson, although it was 2 minute rounds and I think it was only 8 rounds, Mike Tyson didn't look like he broke a sweat at all. And at times it looked like he didn't really know what to do in terms of his footwork. But what do I know? I'm not a boxer. But it just looked like there were cinder blocks attached to his feet because he wasn't really, moving. But also that's where he was getting a lot of his power. Roy Jones looked like he was in there trying to utilize his speed, but as soon as he got hit, you can tell he felt it because he kept clinching Mike, and Mike looked like he was getting pissed off. I was waiting for him to bite his ear off, but Mike seems to be on he seems to be on a different level of Mike Tyson.
We're not trying to see Mike backpedal. He's doing good. He's doing good.
So,
I see that.
but I honestly I give kudos to both of them. They're both over 50 years old, and they had a boxing match. But you can still tell that Mike Tyson's power is still there because in the post-fight interview, Roy Jones was still holding his ribs or his abdomen, and he mentioned about running it back again because it ended in draw. But then he paused and said, "But I don't know." So I don't think he wants to get back in the ring, especially after feeling what Mike has in store. But do I think it should have ended in a draw? I do not. I think Tyson won that fight. Although Roy Jones had a flurry moment, you can say, where he was tagging Mike with his speed at one point in the fight. I think it was more towards the end, but I think Mike won that fight handily. And the judges were off the.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised by how good Mike Tyson looked. Only because there's videos that go on the internet all the time with him training and sparring and showing other fighters different techniques and stuff. And he's looked really good. But obviously I'm still surprised in the sense that a fight is completely different from training. Completely different. It takes a lot more out of you. And he's, like you said, he looked like he didn't break a single sweat. He looked really good out there. But it definitely wasn't the best matchup because it was clear as day that as soon as, Roy Jones Jr. felt the power, he really didn't want to get into, he really just didn't want to get into a boxing match with Tyson. And ultimately, like you said, he was clinching a lot. But I don't blame him. If I ever had to go into the boxing ring with Mike Tyson, I probably wouldn't even want to clinch with him. So yeah, they both look good. Obviously, they're both over 50. One's 54, one's 51. So, props to them because they both looked good. And even though, like I said, it didn't look like Roy Jones really wanted to be in there, he was using his speed. He was moving very well. For a guy who's 51 years old. So props to both of them. But I agree completely. I don't see how I was kind of bothered that we waited all that time and sat there all night just to see it end in a draw, especially considering I don't think it was that close a fight at all. I honestly I think Tyson winning probably 5 rounds to 3, if I had to say. So.
I probably would have given Roy Jones probably 3 rounds at best. So, but Tyson, I think, won the fight handedly. But my thing is, Tyson spoke about it after the fight that he gives credit to Roy Jones because Roy Jones was the only one that wanted to fight him. He asked multiple people and he didn't disclose who they were, but he said he asked multiple people and they weren't up for it or they just didn't respond to him. And Roy Jones was the only one that said, "Give me a contract, I'll sign it." So I give Roy Jones props just for even stepping in the ring with Mike Tyson, and then it being a smaller ring at that. You can't do much running. Mike just being able to handle all that power from Mike for 8 rounds, regardless of how old he is, you can definitely tell he still got it. And I think he's gonna fight more. I would like to see who he fights because I don't really think there's many people that will be willing to step in the ring with him. But with everything going on in that pay-per-view, the star of the show was Snoop Dogg, boy. That commentary was hitting. That boy is a clown. I definitely would like to see him more on the commentary end because he definitely was very entertaining, especially with the fight the Nate Robinson fight where he goes, "Oh Lord," when Nate Robinson got knocked out, or even with the fight that wasn't really entertaining I wouldn't say entertaining, but not as entertaining because all the clinching going on. He was still there to keep the fight more interesting with his commentary. So I would like to see him not only commentate more boxing, but just commentate in general.
No, I agree. I mean, we've seen Snoop commentate on fucking Animal Planet, and it's hilarious. So obviously, it'd be great to see him, his commentary on, I mean, literally anything. But with that being said, we'll move on to our final topic, which is Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia on Saturday. Who do you got winning that fight?
Yeah, so we're gonna end the show with our picks. We talked about this before. I'm not changing my pick. I don't know about you, but I'm rolling with Errol Spence to win the fight. I think Danny Garcia is going to make it an interesting fight. So I still want to tune in because I'm not going to doubt him by any means or underestimate him because he still is a championship fighter. Not saying he doesn't have a title at the moment, but he's still a championship fighter. He can still pull off a win. But I'm rolling with Errol Spence. I think it's time that we see Spence versus Crawford, although I don't think it's going to happen. I want to see it happen. And I think Spence is going to make a point. And, I think he's going to pretty much make Danny Garcia a prime example of why he's better than Crawford, because Crawford is coming off a win recently at that with his knockout. So I think Spence is going to make Danny Garcia an example and basically show the world why he's the best fighter in that division and why there's no one other than himself that Crawford can honestly face.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm gonna go with Errol Spence as well. But I don't want to sleep on Danny Garcia. He's obviously a very good boxer. I think this fight will go the distance. Especially considering, because like I said, I think Errol Spence wins it. But Danny Garcia has a very good chin. I don't think he goes down. Yeah, ultimately, I'm gonna stick with Errol Spence.
Yeah, Errol Spence by decision. Now, if he knocks him out, then he's gonna put everyone on notice. So, I think it'll go decision just because my respect for Danny Garcia. But I'm gonna say it's a 12-round fight. I'm gonna give it 8-4, Spence. What you got it?
8-4. I'm gonna go 7-5.
All right, you heard it here first, guys. We both got Errol Spence in the matchup against Danny Garcia this upcoming Saturday. You guys should go tune into that fight and also tune into our NFL Pick'em this week, which will be dropping tomorrow or the day after this drops, I should say. And go tune into our guys over at the Expansion Pack podcast. We already explained this. They're a gaming podcast, so if you're interested in that or interested in learning any further news, the guys are hilarious. They know their stuff. Go check them out. And make sure to come back because we love you guys. We appreciate you guys for tuning in as always. Make sure to hit the like, follow, and subscribe button. And what do we say, Jovan? The bell on the bottom. Click that.
Bottom.
Click
somewhere over here.
So make sure to do that. And until next time, we'll see you.
You're talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. My boy's talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love.